on the first part of the call. We all know what's coming. We all know people are going to say, oh, I was just looking online. I just thought I'd get an online quote. Can't you just tell me? Or, oh, send that to me in an email, or I got to talk to my spouse, or, oh man, you're the fifth agent to call me. We all know what's coming. It's being the best at that and making the most of your at-bats that's going to really change your close rate and how many you sell from these.
Welcome, everybody. I'm really happy here for to kick off our episode number 1 for the Insurance Agents Think Tank podcast. I have amazing guests for the show today, Jeremy and Kristin. Jeremy is one of the largest Allstate agents in the country, also has role play with the Olson Agency. And then, of course, Kristin, who does all the work, right? The right hand,
I don't know about that.
the right hand of Jeremy. So I'm so glad for you guys to be on episode number 1. And, this episode is really all about the trick to making money off of insurance leads, right? Aggregated online leads, especially with the pandemic. A lot of people were relationship driven. You should still be relationship driven, right? But now with the pandemic, you can't really do roadshow events, or, there's a lot of sources, in-person sources that got cut off. And so we have a lot of people just jumping into internet leads. And so I really wanted to create a podcast about how do you make money off of those, right? Because everybody tries them out. I hear so many times that insurance leads don't work, right? I'm sure you guys hear that all the time. But you guys have really found a way to make that successful. And so Jeremy, I'd love to hear your story about how you came to be and how you made them work.
Yeah, no. And first of all, I really appreciate and am honored to be your first guest. And I really do find it kind of ironic that the topic is internet leads because I've been an Allstate agent. This is my 24th year now. And for my first 22, did not buy a lead. I heard all those same stories, these types of things. They don't retain well. They just shop price. Their close rate's terrible. They're just not good. And so I never bought leads my first 22 years. 2 years ago, I was given some pretty high goals by my company, and I knew we had to change things. And so that's when we developed this whole arm of the business. In fact, we have 11 people now on our outbound team that just work internet leads. So we went from 0 leads to a significant amount of leads. And we've learned a lot of things along the way, things not to do, things to do. And that's what we'll share with you today.
Perfect. Yeah, I think what people want to know most is what not to do, right? It's how do I save myself from making these mistakes so I'm not paying for these mistakes? What's the quickest way to that, the end goal of making money off of leads? So I actually want to ask you first, how do you know which lead provider to find? Because there's so many different lead providers. Where do you even start? What would you say about that?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, that's changing every day. And that would be the first tip that I would give anybody getting into the lead game is you've got to be consistent. This isn't something that, I hear a lot of agency owners say, oh, there was a special came out with this vendor. I'll buy a couple $100 worth and we'll just try it. And from our experience, that isn't the best tactic. If you're going to be into leads and working them, you've got to commit to making that a part of your business. So we, now 2 years later, we have probably 3 people on the back end that are constantly tweaking our vendors, the type of lead, the filters. We're looking at our close rate, our cost per sale. It is a full-time job. So that would be the first thing is you've got to be consistent and make this a regular part of your business. What would you say in terms of picking vendors? What are some of the things that we've done?
Well, what I've noticed is that you've got to like your vendors. And so there are people that represent, certain lead companies, and it's just like any other business relationship that you have. You've got to like them. You've got to feel like they're in your corner because you call them a lot. And so because you're going to be tweaking filters, sometimes you hear things from the team, like where there's some trends that you see that, the prospects are saying things that we didn't know that they were being led down that road. So we just want to make sure that you have open communication and really look at that account manager as someone that's truly helping you. If they aren't, I would say either ask for someone else to be your rep, or, maybe it's not the right company for you, but each company has like a different way of doing business. And so I think it's really important to love doing business with them. And then beyond that, I think that just if the leads, like if the team loves the leads and if they believe they love the leads and the leads are good, the leads are going to be good. If the team thinks the leads are bad, the leads are going to be bad. So it is funny to hear like what people say. And we've bought a lot of leads. There was one time where we really truly thought the leads probably weren't the best leads for us. Other than that, all leads have really been good. It's just how the team views them.
Well, it seems like that is a common go-to. If somebody's having a poor month, they'll always go right to that vendor. And I think we would probably disagree with that. We currently use 2 or 3 different vendors, and there's some people that love vendor A, some people that think they're the worst ever. So it's all in their perception and their mindset of how they think about leads. To me, the vendors don't make or break your success. They're certainly a part of it, but it's more your mindset going into working the leads and then being prepared to work them once you are talking to a live person.
Absolutely. I found, you know, some of the advice that I like to give out is if you try now, let's say your budget's $1,000. I tell agents, if you're going to try internet leads and maybe you dabbled in it in the past, you shouldn't spend $1,000 at one company when you're trying it out, because in the back end, what these internet lead aggregators are doing, they even buy and sell leads between one another. You know, if they don't have somebody to buy the lead instantly, they'll sell it off into another lead aggregator. So what that means is you want to, like you said, track your numbers. You want to know your cost per sale. You want to know your contact rate, your lead to quote rate, you know, so you can really engage in your numbers and find out, all right, if I'm trying 3 internet lead companies in my area, you know, I'm going to spend $300 a piece, not $1,000 on one, because again, you want to learn about the relationship that you brought up, Kristen, and knowing are they easy to work with? Are they good to work with? And then as you start to learn about them, you can really dial and fine tune your filters and the type of leads that you're buying and really dive into it. So that's that. I guess that would be my first tip too, is don't just spend it all in one place. Grab top 3. Like I love EverQuote, Quote Wizard, you know, grab those top 3 lead providers that are out there and then, you know, dive into it. So what happens, can you talk us through the workflow that you guys have when an internet lead comes in? Can you kind of go through how do you work it?
Yeah, you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, I mean, the lead comes in. So, I mean, they're real-time leads. So the first thing with leads is that you've got to really, like, as fast as you can get to them, the better, because they're not only going to just you. So say that an EverQuote lead comes in, there's probably 5 other people or 5 other companies that are going to be contacting that. So the speed to contact is the most important thing. Everybody wants to talk to them first. But so if the call comes in and it gets answered, great, then we have a sales process that we use. If it doesn't get answered, then within 5 minutes, the system will call them back. And then after 60 minutes, it will dial again. So the first day we have 3 connections that we try to make if we don't get a hold of the lead the first time. And then after that, it goes into a dialer campaign. So for 5 days, it will be every 5 hours, the lead will be contacted. And so that's really like the cadence that we use or the workflow that we use when we start with the leads.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Is
so
there
a lot of contact. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead, Todd.
absolutely. Well, is there any, so like when an internet lead comes into our system, we like instantly fire off a text message trying to just get them engaged with us. You know, really easy scripting, something to the effect of, hey, I'm working on your quote. How would you prefer to receive this, by text or email, right? We're just trying to get them instantly engaged, knowing that we're working for them. What about scripting on your end? Let's say, you know, you immediately make that phone call. Can you kind of walk us through your, you know, how do you get their engagement? Because correct me if I'm wrong, you guys were saying that that's the most important part, that first, I think you said first 90 seconds earlier. Can you kind of walk me through what does that first 90 seconds look like?
Yeah, no, and to me, that is, you know, really the biggest thing between somebody being successful at leads and somebody not. You've got to start with having a company like MVP that's just the best at what they do, and you know, having the data under control. That's a given. you're going to get into the internet lead and not do that, I would say, don't even try it. You've got to start there for sure. But after that, it's really working on what to say to these prospects and really being the best at it. I see a lot of agency owners, they get into leads, they just say, here you go, try to call some leads. And they don't really provide that training and that support. And I was telling you earlier, we were looking at our numbers for last year this morning, and our close rate on internet leads that we spoke to is 16%, which is probably 3 times higher. I know you were kind of shaking your head, but that's the reality in our agency because we spend so much time on the first part of the call. We all know what's coming. We all know people are going to say, oh, I was just looking online. I just thought I'd get an online quote. Can't you just tell me? Or, oh, send that to me in an email, or I got to talk to my spouse, or, oh man, you're the 5th agent to call me. We all know what's coming. It's being the best at that and making the most of your at-bats that's going to really change your close rate and how many you sell from these.
Yeah, I don't even know what the percentages of people that initial reaction is. I would at least say at least half is going to be some sort of objection. I already talked to somebody, I'm not interested, you're the 5th person. And so we really, really work on keeping the conversation very open at the front end. So asking open-ended questions, keeping them on. I think it's really hard because you got to change your mindset around bothering people. I hear that a lot at first. The people who aren't good at keeping them on in the first 90 seconds, well, they sounded really rushed. I didn't want to bother them.
Yeah.
But even if they say, I don't have time, then your response is, oh, absolutely, no problem. Really quick, let me just see if I can confirm a few details so that when I do call you back, I can make sure that you're the right fit and I don't waste any of your time. And so then you're straight into asking them a few details. They might end up having time. You don't know, but we practice that kind of stuff all the time. We even practice just active listening. So we'll reenact calls where we have our team like literally just practice active listening, because at the front end of the call, they're not just saying, I'm not interested. They're saying other things. And all we're hearing is, I'm not interested. And you're thinking, oh, great, here's another one that's not going to work out. So asking open-ended questions at the beginning of the call, starting out with confirming details like right away. So if I called you, or if I called you, I would say, hey, Todd, it looks like you're researching your insurance online. What has you looking for insurance today? And you might say, oh yeah, no, I just called, I've been called by 5 other people. And then I might say something like, well, absolutely, man, that's no fun having to talk to 5 people. Who you been talking to? And just open up the conversation. Like if you keep on asking the questions and you're super friendly, that first 90 seconds is going to turn into, there's going to turn into 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you're actually into having a good conversation about their insurance.
I like that. Just keeping them engaged instead of just shutting it off. Is
But
there
the
some
practice piece is huge.
Yeah, I mean, we practice that stuff every day. So we have a team meeting every Tuesday morning. We call it the one that got away, where they're literally talking about difficult situations on leads that they've been coming up against. And as a team, we talk about how we might work our way through that. So Thursday, we do an evening meeting where we're going through their stats,
All
their data for the week individually in a group setting of how did they, their tasks, their follow-up, their notes, how did they do on that? This is an everyday thing where you've got to stay in front of your team and really coach them to success. It's not something you can just turn over to them and say, hey, we have this awesome lead manager now. You guys don't need to do anything. There's also the human element to it, which is the difference between that 3 to 5% and 16.
So can you give me an example of, let's say, your best opening script on internet leads? Was that it? Was that, is there any other things that you can give to the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, we have so many scripts, but the opening script typically with, let's just say like a company like EverQuote where they filled out a form, usually we open up the conversation by not saying the word quote. Looks like you were, looking for a quote on your insurance, anything that sets us apart. And changes their mindset about what they're actually doing. So the reason why we say, it looks like you were researching your insurance and you filled out a form online. That's awesome. It looks like you'd be a great fit for our company. So we're giving them something positive. We're assuming that they're researching their insurance and that they're going to have a conversation about their insurance. And we're kind of seeing how they feel about that. And then the second part is you start immediately confirming details. It looks like you have a 2017 Honda Accord. Yes. Awesome. I just need to confirm a few more details, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like with our company. And so you're just straight into the quote, but you've got to ask those open-ended questions up front. But really, it is as simple as it looks like you're researching your insurance and you filled out a form online. You did a great job of that. So we're giving them something really positive, and it looks like you'd be a great fit for our company. And you're driving a 2017 Honda Accord. And then we have some other confirming details that we'll ask, like, really quick, I'll just confirm a few details. Do you have any accidents or tickets on your records within the last 5 years? We say 5 years because then that covers the 3 years.
Right.
And then we might ask, do they own or rent their home? Is there anybody else listed on the policy? I have this big thing about saying, I really have a thing about not saying, are you single, married, or divorced? I think that can cause like somebody to be really offensive. Or, like I know if someone said that to me, I would just feel like, oh, it's none of your business. That's kind of personal the way you're asking that. And so we really work on just positioning things in a really positive way up front. There's 1,000,006 things
that.
like just within that first 90 seconds that you can work on. It's super fun.
Yeah, that's what this is. It's in sales, it's always practicing your craft, right? It's always active listening. And even a lot of us, especially salespeople who think they know it all, right? We've got to practice on active listening and knowing that there's other ways to do things, especially like you had mentioned, not asking about if they're married or not. I mean, I think that's something that I need to actually implement in our office, and just saying, is there anyone else listed? Because I agree. You never know if you're going to offend or, if you cause any kind of feelings that will get in the way, right? Get in the way of what you're trying to accomplish, which is building a relationship. So I think that's awesome.
And the other thing too, that's super duper important is the other than price conversation, that most people will just leave that and they'll get straight into the quote, but you really do want to flesh out what other than price is important to them. Jeremy has a great way of doing that. I always love it when he just says, if you were to just like we're just going to assume that price is super important to you. So we're going to put that kind of on a shelf for right now. And let's assume that all insurance was free. What would you want? What other than price would you want? And so you kind of get them to visualize that, and we'll give you like a number at the end if we need to go back and take a look at tweaking some things, but keeping coverage is the most important thing. We can do that, but let's just assume that all insurance was free right now so that we can get you the right coverage for you and your family.
Well, I think you said the word relationship a few minutes ago. I think that's really the key driver in our agency that has made us be successful with internet leads. Is we've all heard that stereotype of what internet leads are. They just buy the state minimum. They just buy the cheapest coverage. We talk people into great coverage every day. My people are putting in the chat, just sold somebody that had 25,000. They now have an umbrella policy, because we are not going into these conversations in that mindset that this is an internet lead. And an internet lead is a person. They're all people that need to have the right insurance. And that's what I think really differentiates us, is that we're looking at them as people, not as a lead.
Let's talk about what type of employee you need to be working internet leads. What would you say what type of employee, what's the right person to work internet leads?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. So when we decided to get into leads a couple years ago, one of the ideas we had, and I think it was actually Kristen's idea, was to separate our sales team. To us, it's really a different person, a different mindset working leads versus working current customers. So we have half of our team working the everyday inbound service transactions, cross-selling our customers. We have the other half of the sales team just working internet leads. Every single day, all day long, they're working leads. For me, the number that I want to be able to provide for each team member is between 10 and 15 new leads every single day. But how we arrived at who was going to be on the team, we just interviewed them. We just told them, hey, we're going to be separating the team. Here's what person A would do. Here's what person B would do. And people just kind of fell into the right spots. They would, it's just their personality. They're totally different jobs. If you're working internet leads, you've got to be somebody that loves fast pace. You got to be dialing a lot of times a day. So number one, fast pace. You got to be okay with rejection. A lot of my people that work my book, they wouldn't love to be hung up on or told no 15 times a day. So they wouldn't want to be on that team. Now, when we interview employees to hire them for our sales team, we mention both roles and we just kind of ask them, which one do you think would be a better fit for your personality? But they're just very different personalities.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that they're kind of like, if you see the two teams, it's really fun to see the personality of the teams, but the outbound team and the ones that are doing the leads, you got to have a sense of humor. You've got to really, be someone that is self-driven and will do the consistent dialing, and you've got to have a sense of humor.
Yeah, you've got to know that burnout can be a real thing. There are going to be some days you just get in there and you don't feel like making 200 calls that day because you did it yesterday and you didn't get any. You just have to know that's a part of the job. And we spend a ton of time working on that mental side. That'd be another tip for owners. What these guys do on our outbound team is very hard work, and they love it, but it's very hard work calling this many people and talking to this many people who are shopping multiple carriers and multiple agencies. So you got to spend a lot of time focusing on their mental. I have a saying, happy people sell more. So we want to make our people happy as often as we can. So we do little things like we break up their days of the week. One day they'll be working traditional internet leads. The next day they'll be working live transfers. We have them rotate every single day. So they're in a different role. They're still working leads, but the types of leads is different just for that mental break.
Right.
One day they're dialing, one day they're fielding phone calls, but both days they're working leads.
So what about the smaller agents who maybe just have themselves and maybe one other producer in the office? Is there any advice you would give to that person, who has to wear all the hats? Any kind of advice you'd give on that?
I think you still have to hire the right person. So someone that's got the high energy, but someone who's able to multitask. I would make sure that they're the right fit, and probably blocking time too. So knowing when the best time of the day is to actually call those leads, know when the leads are coming in, what type of leads you have, is super important. I was going to say too, just a sidebar, a tip for the team members with the types of leads. Every company, it's a different type of lead. You should know how many questions they filled out on the form. You should really know what that user experience is on the other side so that you can speak to that lead in a really educated way where you know what they've been through. But for the agent, I've talked to agents, and we used to have our team where we didn't buy like real-time leads, but we did have like requotes in the system, and we had some old leads that we bought. So if they did have time at the end of the day, because every team member was doing service and sales, there was more time, they would at the end of the day start going in the system and just calling some of those requotes and some of the old leads. But the team member that's doing it all, they just have to sign on to, yes, I'm committed to doing this role. And you may have to motivate them differently, but communication between you and your team member is just key to everything.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, one thing I don't want to forget to touch on is the importance of activity. So, a lot of agencies will measure number of dials. We certainly do track that as well. But one thing that we've found is super important, especially for these people working internet leads, is how much they're on the phone. So we look at their talk time over anything else. And the minimum to be on my team is 3 hours per day. Right now we're having a promo because we always are trying to incentivize these guys to be on the phone as much as they can. And every single day this month, we've had multiple people over 5 hours. We've had a couple a day over 6 hours, and people look at us like, that's impossible. But it actually is possible if you're focusing on that first 90 seconds of the call and extending the conversation a lot with them. It is, there's very few and far between days that somebody would be under 3 hours on my team.
Wow. That's a lot of talk time, 5 hours.
It's a lot of talk time, and you figure how many people are not answering those dials because they're leads that aren't there. How many hangups are you going to get? Quite a few. So that just shows you by extending the conversation what you can get out of those conversations. It's kind of an art. We listen to these guys talk on the phone every day, and
it's really fun.
they just truly have fun with it, turning that person out of being that internet lead that just wanted the 3-second phone call with a number. That's all they wanted, just a number. They make a game out of it. How can I turn this person into really getting the importance of having an insurance agency relationship, of having better coverage? That's what drives my salespeople. And I think that goes back to the hiring. That's what we hire for, people that have a passion for that. And yes, I'm, the first to admit an internet lead probably is a little bit different than a cross sell. They are
Yeah.
initially, but how do we turn them into the other one? That's our whole goal in all of this, is turning a person away from being a lead, just a traditional internet lead. In fact, we have, oh, did you have a question, Todd?
Yeah. So one of the process that I get asked about a lot is, what do you do with all the leads that don't answer the phone? Because I mean, just in our own experience, I'd say only maybe 10%, if we're lucky, answer the phone. So what do you do if they don't answer the phone? I know you said 5 minutes later, you make another phone call. And then I think you said 60 minutes later. But, what if you don't get them on the phone the first
Yeah,
day?
so we'll
Are you
do.
quoting them?
No, we don't. And we don't have the ability to text just with our company. We're not texting out to customers. So they get in a queue where they're called every 5 hours for the first up to 5 days until they get contacted. And then we're watching, like in the system, you can actually see how many have been contacted in the first day, how many have been contacted within that first 5 days. It goes, all the way up to the first 6 months. So
Okay.
they're in the system, and then we're scrubbing them to make sure that they're still compliant and all of those things, along the way. But it's just people are continuing to call them until they pick up.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, just some tips. I've seen some success with agents on internet leads who, and this might not be for, specifically Allstate because texting issues, but I've seen some agents have a lot of success around doing home leads, and it doing teasers, right? Using, if you don't get them on the phone within the first 24 hours, then, there's a good chance a couple people already talked to them, right? And they've already gotten a few quotes. So how do you stand out ahead of that person that's already sent them a quote? So would you say in your business, you have so many marketers generating those quotes via phone that you don't feel like taking the time to sending them somewhat of a teaser quote that kind of dilutes your relationship? It almost sounds like that you're trying to build with them on the phone. Have you tried doing?
For us, we don't do that because we want to be talking, if we're talking 4, 5, 6 hours a day, we're busy doing that. I would rather put my people in a position where they're always talking to people rather than just blanket mailing people. Now that's a whole separate activity. You own a mailing company. We love mailers. That's a whole separate thing.
Sure.
But my salespeople, I want to be on the phone talking to people all day long.
That's really
And
important.
then there is, yeah, I was just going to say there's a piece in it where I have heard a different school of thought where there's, companies or agencies out there where they require their team to talk less on the phone. Like they want the quote to be done within a certain, let's say like 15 minutes, which would be a really short call for us if you're going to get through the whole quote. We celebrate something we call first call closes. And so we have this competition going all month long where we're looking for, as many first call closes as possible. And then the person, wins an award at the end of the month. So that's someone that's actually going to keep them on the phone, talk about all their insurance, review what their current coverage is, not quote apples to apples. That's kind of, I think, what sets us apart is the fact that we don't do that and we kind of fight for that. And a lot of times, I think our talk paths qualify the prospect, whether they're a good fit for our agency or not. Because if they're really resistant and they start to get, really up in arms about having a conversation about their liability or having a conversation about the coverage that they picked, you can just tell whether they're the right fit or not. And so sometimes, we'll shorten up the conversation, still send them a quote, but probably in some cases, they're not the best prospect. And I always say, if you're talking to someone who's really combative, if they're, there's a lot of different variables, but a lot of times their interaction with you initially is going to be their interaction with you as, as a customer and as you continue. And that can take up way more time than quoting the right person for your agency.
Absolutely. So what would you say?
Yeah,
Oh, keep going. You had some more.
But I was just going to mention one thing too before I forget. We started this call by talking about the stereotypes of leads, that they don't retain well, they buy bad coverage, and I somewhat agree with some of that. But we also have a lot of processes in place after the fact that I think are super important. So we've been able to maintain a 90% and above retention on my business, despite doing a lot of internet sales over the past 2 years. We're over 90. And a lot of that is because we have what we call a cleanup artist on our team. That's her title. Just having fun with it. But it truly, her full-time job, Eileen, is to call all of the business at the end of the month that we sold as a result of an internet lead. And her whole goal is to really clean it up, get them out of that mindset, take a second pass at things. So she'll say things like, Todd, I know you purchased this by your initial way of getting into contact with us was through an internet lead. You went online and said, hey, I want the best rate. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about today, and I'm sure Jeff already did this, but just the importance of having that local relationship, that agency relationship. And then she'll take a second pass at their coverages to try to change things and just clean them up a little bit more. I think that is super important if you're really looking to keep this business rather than just burn it, churn through it.
Oh, absolutely. I've even heard tricks of people. I think this is kind of funny, but I sent out postcards a while back. There was a big news story talking about identity fraud. And so we send out once a year, we send out all of our customers a postcard that shows them how to put themselves on the do not call list. And you can imagine how that helps my business, sending all those people postcards. And we've had actually a lot of people say, thank you for sending that to us. We didn't realize our number wasn't on there. And, that's a good way to protect your business at the same time from marketers or, people that are trying to solicit my customers at the same time. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the best way to make money off internet leads is first, you got to know your data. You got to track it.
Mhm.
You got to have the right people in place using really good open-ended scripting, getting people engaged to talk, right? You want to learn, you want to be different. And how you're
Mhm.
different is through your engagement and
Mhm.
what you're saying to people. And I almost feel like I always use the term assembly line because you have your marketer, you have your cadence that you call on, you have your open-ended scripting, and then you have a cleanup artist once you close it, or you're calling them consistently, which is, I think, the key, right?
Mhm.
If you're not talking to somebody, you're not closing something. So we know the process. What would you say the failures you've made on internet leads have been? Like, can you take us through some of the things that you think you quickly learned, like, oh, that was a mistake, I shouldn't do that again? Anything that comes to mind?
I think that you know, you always want to monetize the leads and make sure that like his spend on the leads is monetizing in the business. There was a time where we had just some leads that, our team kept on saying, these prospects are saying this. And it was when we first got in the lead game, and we were just like, oh, they're just complaining. And we just kept on, telling them that we just kind of didn't address it, I think, fast enough. And it ended up that our sales went down that month, and it was due to those were actually just not the right leads for our business. Just the way that they came in and what was being said on the other end, they just weren't the right leads. And so we ended up getting rid of them, but I think we took maybe a little bit too long. So it did give us, a little bit of decrease in sales for a month or two, as we kind of got those out of the system. And then, so I would say, listen to your people, but listen to your people, not in a way where they're just complaining. Like if they're giving constructive feedback and it's like everybody is saying the same thing, there's probably something to it. You're always going to have, I mean, if you have multiple team members, you're usually going to have someone who's Debbie Downer about everything, or gets, frustrated if they're not selling. And so they're going to complain that it's always the lead. I would throw that one out because that one doesn't, that one doesn't count. But if it's constructive feedback, listen to your people. And I think the other thing is ramp up. It's really important when you have new team members that they have to like start building their pipeline and ramping up. And so helping them really know how to manage their tasks and their notes and know what that means. That is their lifeline. So helping them really understand how to manage their pipeline and manage them managing their pipeline. I think at first we took a lot of that stuff for granted, and we started noticing that things weren't statused right. And the system's only as good as the data you put in it. And so we started getting pretty strict about, well, very strict about how a third grader could do it. It comes in, you mark it as what kind of lead it is. And then you put, you talk to the person, you put notes in the system, and you schedule the follow-up task, right? And so it's a very simple thing, but a lot of salespeople don't like to do it consistently every single time because they think they need to make another phone call really fast. But we got to the point where if people don't do that, and if we see a trend of them just being careless with the data they're putting in the system, then we'll actually take them away from that. We actually have old leads that they can call if they don't want to manage the good leads that we're giving them and respect that. So I think that's super duper important.
Amen.
Yeah, no, and for me as the owner, I think one of the mistakes I've made, and that just kind of goes with my personality. I'm somebody that if there's something broken, just go fix it. And so I would just buy unlimited leads. If I was spending $20,000 a month and I wanted more sales, I thought, oh, just go to 50. And that automatically, the close rate would stay the same. And it doesn't always work that way. You've got to figure out the balance. I would rather close 16% of 1,000 leads than 5% of 10,000 leads because it's more cost effective for me as the agency owner. There's just that balance between knowing what number you've got to produce and being efficient with everything. So don't automatically assume, just buy unlimited leads. And that's on an individual basis too. What Kristin is referring to that we implemented, learning and tweaking every day. But one thing that we implemented was my sales team now has to earn unlimited leads, unlimited new leads. So like I said earlier, I like people to get between 10 and 15 fresh leads, we call them, new leads per day. But if they write less than 35 policies the month before, they don't get them the next month. Because if you can't sell 35 plus with that many leads, there's something else that needs to be fixed. So we put them back on older leads and make them work, improve themselves, and get back to that 35 before I'll be spending money on them again.
I can't thank you enough for bringing that up because, as I coach, as you guys coach tons of agents, I think one of the things, if I'm going to crack a whip on some agents listening to this podcast right now, it's you've got to know your numbers. And when I say know your numbers, I'm not saying, every last penny that you spent, but you've got to know what your staff are doing. You got to know if they're converting or not.
Mm-hmm.
You got to know what how many are converting to a quote, how many are converting to a sell, because you've got to identify the problem. You got to know what the problem is. Are they not, you got to listen to their phone calls if they're not converting well, right? So there's a lot of insight as an agency owner. And if you can't do it yourself, you got to hire, a manager to manage that process about, are they entering the data in properly? As my agency is used and built off of internet leads, what we've also found is that a lot of our internet leads convert not within the first 30 days, but they're converting 12 to 24 to even 36 months out. A lot of these internet leads, correct me if I'm wrong, in your area, but what I've seen is that almost, even if you use a filter where they say they have no claims, we still get like half of our internet leads that have a claim in the last 3 years, especially auto claims. And so if you can't convert it today because you're too high on a surcharge, something like tracking a claim falling off and stealing that person midterm is where I would say we close almost 60 to 70% of all of our internet leads. So not within that first 30 days, but as those leads fall off and as you're accumulating your data set, there's a lot of potential in the future. Have you guys noticed that?
Oh yeah, no, we work on that stuff all day long. We call them triggers. If they don't close something today, are there any triggers that could help you close it tomorrow? So an example would be somebody has a birth date. They're going to turn 25. They're going to 50 in 6 months. You weren't quite competitive enough today to win them over. You put that in your calendar to follow up when they do turn that age. That's going to give them a better rate. Or maybe they have only 9 months with a prior carrier and your rate isn't the best until 1 year or 3 years. You put that in your system to follow up. The people that are successful do that. Others just say, moving on to the next one. And so, we work on that stuff all day long.
And it is funny because you'll hear a team member customers, they'll say, oh, I closed that one that so-and-so talked to, a few months ago, and they didn't think it was a good enough lead to follow up on. And I followed up, and closed it. So it is, a lot of times people will, because you can put leads back in the system if you don't want to put them in your task list and have them in your pipeline. And it is funny what people do to themselves. I can't emphasize enough too, just following up in the CRM. Like, I think a lot of times, I remember back when I was in sales and we had Salesforce, which was our CRM. And I just remember not really being trained efficiently on that and thinking, what does that do? What does that do? And, not knowing exactly how to use it, because the company that I worked for, they just said, here's something that you're going to put all of your customers in. Just make sure that you have all their addresses up to date and you have all their, information in there. But there's so many ways that you can track yourself in your CRM if you really know how to use it. And so we do spend a lot of time teaching them really how to use it. The investment in the CRM is such a huge investment to the company. That is our lifeline. It's like, it is the phone. It is our connection out to everyone. So you have to have a CRM that you rely on in a really solid way. And I think that's why what you do is so important, Todd, is because without that, we can't even be in the lead game.
Well, that goes back to, we've talked a lot about the importance of listening and the relationship, but, you get a customer or a lead that right now he's single, one car, you're not competitive, but because you care about that relationship and being different during the course of your half an hour conversation, you found out that he's getting married next summer. So a lot of people would just put that off. They lost it. No deal. They didn't make a sale versus you have a potential 2-car in the summer because they're going to get married. They're going to have a better rate. They'll have additional cars. And it's just a win-win. If you put that in your system, it's a future sale for you versus just letting it go by the wayside because you couldn't close it today.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of, especially the captive agents listening in, might have a little bit of a different mentality. You can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but a lot of agents feel like, we're selling our customers that we're selling policies to, like we own those customers. You don't. Your carrier owns the customer, right? And we're on a service contract, getting renewal commissions. And what I always try to preach to agents is you got to think of your business as a different model. You're in the business of building relationships with people around you. Like the more you know about consumers in your area, or if you do multiple states, wherever you're spending marketing dollars, the more that you learn about that consumer and then consumers in aggregate around you, now you have a system, as long as you're using that data properly, entering in that information, using those notes, tracking your follow-up, you're growing a data set which you own. That's your business. And then if anything comes out in the future, a good example of people say, how do you make money on internet leads? They suck. It's not just selling them, if you're buying auto leads, auto insurance. It's you're selling them that home, you're selling them the umbrella, you got their specialty property or secondary rental. Like as you build that relationship, you start to convert more money, more premium revenue from those consumers as you're growing your business, which is data. Like that's what I preach. So I don't know. I feel like too many agents get caught in the rat race of buying internet leads, calling them 3 to 5 times, and then they get lost in some leads list somewhere. And it's never follow it up with properly ever again. I mean, what do you hear from agents typically?
Yeah, no, they do. They just think it's all about that new lead, and there's so much to be found in our old leads. That's one of the reasons why we started making people earn new leads, is so that if they don't, then they're going to work all those old leads that we've, for 2 years now, we've bought just, I don't know how many thousands of leads. But that was money I spent yesterday, but it can still pay off today.
Yeah, that is everything. And I always go crazy when agents will say, I bought internet, and it's and I think that's that consistency piece on the, on the front end. It's the consistency piece on the managing, your notes and all of your tasks and the follow-up in the system. And then it's the continued follow-up. Like you can't emphasize that enough. There's statistics out there on how many follow-ups it actually takes to close a sale. And have you ever seen that, Todd? It's always posted all over. I'll send you the
We're running it. We actually run those stats in MVP for all of our users. And so we found that after 12 contact attempts, represents 60% of all closing rates. So, at least 12 attempts to sell more than half of average user
Mhm.
sales. Then you start getting really crazy numbers like 30 contacts to do like 20%. So, I mean, when you talk about leaving money on the table, I
Yeah.
don't know anybody who doesn't want to convert an extra 20% of their sales, even if you have to call 30 times, right? So, yeah, we definitely track all those statistics. Have you looked at geo targeting at all on your internet leads? Is there a specific way that you use your data to geo target?
You're speaking a different language.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and
Yeah,
that's
so we have a person, yeah, I was just gonna say, we have a person that
What would your
actually.
answer be to that?
What is that like a type of car? No. No, so we're doing the people side and managing the people and, knowing, obviously Jeremy's very concerned about the lead spend, but then we also have someone that's, just working in the system and is really good, like, with the data. I always say that, like, if someone's really good, like just working all the data and knowing the back end and the systems and, how to actually program the systems, their sweet spot probably isn't coaching the people and getting like like getting them to their talk paths and their soft skills to success. So we have two different facets where we have somebody doing the operations in the background, and then we're more doing the managing the soft skills on the phone calls and the people, and making sure that the data that we're seeing is making sense for the amount of policies that they're selling.
Yeah, no, and I think, your typical agency with 1, 2, 3 producers, they're going to have to get into that themselves. I have the luxury just because of the size of my team. I have Kristen and I manage how we talk to people. That's what we focus on. But then I have 2 people completely dedicated to leads. One on the vendor side, they're constantly tweaking that. And then I have one person full-time looking at their statuses, their tasks, and their notes. So that's not going to be the case in every agency, of course, but that's why I don't know some of those data questions that you throw
sure.
at us.
Well, and a lot of systems aren't in place, right, to track that data and make it easy so you can tie it all
Yeah,
together. So, I mean,
yeah,
that's what I try to preach a lot to my agents is that, especially if you don't have a budget like a Jeremy Olson, right? You're a newer agent who's maybe only have $500 that they can spend a month.
Mhm.
Um, it's not only tracking your cost per sale or your lead to quote ratio, right? How many are they sending you good leads? And
Mhm.
like you said, Kristen, learning about, are they actually filling out a form, or is that company using teasers? Like, oh, they said I
Mhm.
would win something on Facebook.
Right.
Like
hmm
as you learn about those companies, and as an agent, if you're really competitive in home, you should lead with home leads. If you're
Right.
really competitive in auto, you should lead with auto leads. So it's just, and then if you, what's really interesting in data on my end that I see every single day is that carriers, how they rate per zip code there's actually some, I don't know if they're mistakes. I would say an actuary would laugh me out of the room with their MIT degree if I told them they made a mistake. But I've seen zip codes where, especially in weather-related areas, where if a tornado runs through a county in Dallas, they might penalize, State Farm might penalize the entire county and give some huge surcharges, whereas another carrier, maybe Farmers, only picks specific zip codes that it ran through. And so if you track those kind of zip code statistics, I can see where we have an unfair advantage based on actuary rate increases. So
Mhm.
it's interesting to watch if people are geo targeting or not, or if they are really doubling down in a radius around their office. So I guess it just depends on your marketplace too. So let's talk about role play with Olson Agency, because I think, like you said, you guys are really good at opening up the scripting, the conversations, training people on how to get engagement in that first 90 seconds. Can you tell us a little bit about what role play does and how our listeners might benefit from it?
Yeah, why don't I take the how it was born part and then you take the product, because I'll talk for 2 hours. I get so passionate about it. But Kristen, I hired her 5, 6 years ago from a company called Dale Carnegie, world-renowned training company. She's a certified instructor, just amazing at coaching people. And that's what I wanted on my team, just how to talk better to people and prospects to convert them at a higher rate than we do without talking to them the right way. So, Kristen, one of the first things she said was, Jeremy, we've got to implement this thing called role play. And I was 18 years into my career then, had never role played one single time in my life. My team would never do it. They would all say they would be scared to do it, nervous to do it. They just wouldn't do it. She kept fighting for it. We implemented it. And 5 years later, I can't imagine a day. I can't believe I ever led my team without role playing. That is the same thing as being on a sports team and only showing up for the game. You just can't imagine ever not practicing. And so role play is just a fancy word for practicing. We do it every single day in my agency. And it was so impactful for my own agency and the results that we decided to create a company to share that with other agents around the country.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so the way that it works is we do a live webinar every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And I think the thing that makes it super exciting is that we have sales producers. In fact, we had somebody from your team on our show early on, where they will come on and they will be willing to be coached to the talk path that we're talking about. So this week we're going to be doing what I call power phrases, which is just those little things, even like what we were talking about at the beginning of our conversation, that give us lift in our conversation, help build trust, and eventually help close sales. And we've got so many of them phrases to really like stick with that will really help you. And then we've got some that aren't so great, but we're going to take that topic and we'll talk about it probably for about 15 minutes. And then we'll give some scenarios to these, we call them willing victims. And we'll just see what they do. And then I'll coach them to help them get better. So my goal is always to help them have some sort of aha moment where they see that they can do something different that will get a better result. And as a result of that, everybody watching is identifying with that, and they're going to go and they're going to try it too. And I think it's really engaging and it's fun. Obviously, we never are at a loss for words or, saying some sort of weird joke. So
well, yeah, it's 52 weeks a year, 30-minute show with a script and a specific talk path that our members vote on each week. It then goes into the library, which you have access to. So we use that to onboard our team members every day. We have tons of episodes in there on objections, closing techniques, all this stuff we talked about today. We have it there. So when we hire a new person, they spend a few days just watching the prior episodes. And man, they come out like they've been doing this for a couple of years.
What's nice, when I had my staff member go through your role play, what's really nice about that is he's actually come to me about scenarios and how he should have done something differently. So not only is it good to listen and learn, but it also keeps them engaged in that process, right? And hopefully the agent keeps engaged in that process and is working with the staff. So I'm sure you guys want the agents engaged in that platform as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And we do have a ton of agents engaged. We actually do a Q&A with agents and their team managers or sales managers an hour after the show every Tuesday, just so that if they have any questions for us on how to keep their team engaged, we'll be there for them. So we talk to them for an hour, and it's really just, no, we don't have any agenda. It's just they come to us with questions. So we're forming a nice little community of people that are just having a great ongoing conversation on how to manage their team and coach their team.
Yeah,
Nice.
and then the last piece, and then we can wrap that up. But we also do once a quarter, we do a full 4-week workshop. We call it How to Run Your Agency. It just really is the journey of, I started scratch 24 years ago and now about 40 million and 40 team members and 7 locations. Just how did we get there? We talk about everything. We love sharing and watching people be successful. So we offer that as well every quarter for 4 weeks.
Awesome. That is so awesome. I love that. And that's exactly what we're also trying to do with we're building a group, agentsthinktank.com, where you can listen to these podcasts, and we'll be working with other amazing guests like yourself and really helping build a community of content help. How do we help agents grow? And so I really want to say thank you, both of you, for being on our first podcast. Is there anything, like maybe that one secret sauce thing that we're missing, that you would say to make money off of internet leads?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, just as the team manager and team coach, I can't emphasize enough how to really pay attention to how your people are responding to these leads and really he has, happy people sell more. I say, take care of the people and the items will come. So we've got to take care of our team members and stay in communication with them. Like you just said, the coaching, it's ongoing. You just got to constantly be talking to them. It's a hard role. And I don't think that we as managers can take that lightly, because they need the coaching and the constant communication. So that would be my secret sauce.
Yeah, mine would be the first 90 seconds. You have to be a good
I wish I had that one.
I still, despite we have a training platform and all that, we still send our team members to Dale Carnegie so they can learn how to communicate and be better speakers.
Mhm.
We're always working on just making them better on the phones. That
Yep.
first 90 seconds is the difference between a 10 policy producer and a 100 policy producer.
Well, and I hope all of our listeners understand, especially if you want to compare yourself against somebody like a Jeremy Olson Agency, there's a reason why he's making money off of internet leads. Like, I hope you heard that. Like, unless you're just buying leads and calling them 3 or 4 times and then they just die, like, obviously there's a method to the madness. There's training, there's role playing, there's follow-up processes, there's learning about your data. There's so many things that if you want to get into the internet lead game, you've got to do, or it won't work. Agree?
Agreed. Yeah,
Agreed.
100%.
Well, hey, thanks so much. Where can they find you guys at?
Oh, our website is just, we made it very simple, insuranceroleplay.com.
Awesome.
That's
Hey,
it.
thanks guys. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Todd.
Todd.